Hello everybody, welcome back to, I guess, I don't really have a name for this, I'm just casting some games. My name is Walnut. I'm going to be casting a PVT for you today that I found on the r/allthingsprotoss subreddit. I heard this was a very good game from multiple sources, so I figured I'd take the time and cast this one. I haven't casted an event in a hot minute here because I don't know, I'm not associated with SCV Rush anymore and a few other things, but that's not important. Right now, we're just going to get into the game. Today, we have our Red Protoss player, Covariance. Let's go. And in the bottom right-hand corner, we have the blue Terran player, McDeath. Now, this is about a diamond level, if I'm not mistaken. I know I didn't have the loading screen up right away, but you know, no bigs. So we are having a gas first into barracks here for our Terran player, which is fairly standard in this matchup. Looks like we'll be going a single gas on 14 for our Protoss player, also very standard. This means that out of the Protoss we will not see anything along the lines of a proxy Stargate or DTs or things like that, but out of the Terran we will see a fast Reaper, but no fast factory. You normally, if you were going fast factory or into like a 1-1-1, you would be going a refinery first into barracks, but it looks like he's probably looking to expand here fairly shortly, excuse me. Protoss player just doing all sorts of standard stuff. It is 3 in this gas. Sometimes you can do 2 in your first gas. Just in case you don't need like a ton of gas right away, which it's not common you see those builds. They're more niche builds where you're going maybe something more cheesy or you want more gateways out early, but you generally want as much gas as you can get because Protoss is so gas heavy from minute 1. Looks like we will have some sort of proxy tech here out of McDeath, very likely here since the SCV is out in an odd position and not moving at all. We do have a double gas out from our Protoss player, and it is 2 in each, which is very strange. I haven't seen a build order quite like this in a while, really. Terran player does have his expand started significantly earlier than the Protosses, as there is no Nexus on the way, so there should be a very large economic advantage for our Terran player. Reaper scooting across the map will intercept the Stalker. Fortunately for the Reaper, Stalkers win this fight every single time. No proxy tech, actually. He will just go for the the naked factory inside his main base, going to be adding on a reactor as well so that he can get some early Widow Mines out. Stargate on the way here. This is a very late Stargate, though not as late as I would get it. Kappa HD. This Stargate indicates an Oracle into Robo play, as it's too late for it to be any sort of Sky Toss strat. It might be Phoenix Colossus, though this isn't a standard Phoenix Colossus build as I've seen them. 2 Stalkers here pressuring a little bit. This Marine is not going to be able to hold them off by himself. He is a sad fellow there, being ripped to pieces by Stalker lasers. Now, the CC is delayed by a very significant margin. Good micro there on the Stalker pulling it back, only taking shield damage so far on the other 2. And he's losing a lot of SCVs here. A lot of Marines too being wasted. Widowmine does pop out though, and this should be able to push this aggression back. Though this command center may be cancelled because there aren't quite enough Marines to push this back yet. It will be a little while. Now I'm surprised the Protoss player has not yet put down a Nexus. He looks to be doing so as he is banking up the money for it, but he is very late on this, and if he doesn't cancel this command center, which it looks like he won't with this amount of Marines out, he's still going to be behind in the economy. No Nexus started just yet. He's microing a little bit too hard for that. I know the pain of this all too well. You micro your heart out, keep those Stalkers alive, look back at your base. Oh god, I didn't start my Nexus. Fuck. Anyway, we do have the medevac out now, picking up both Widow Mines, and it will be moving straight across the map, already rallied into the main base. Oracle is out, though it is patrolling in the main base. This is very smart by our Protoss player here. Recognizing that there is Widow Mine potential and leaving the Oracle at home for detection instead. It will be a Phoenix out right now. He's actually scouting in the wrong direction, so he might be caught off guard by these now. I'm very surprised he hasn't left any defense in his main base. This is actually extremely strange to me. He's moving out with his Phoenix in the wrong direction, his detection in the wrong direction, another Phoenix coming out, but it's going to be a little bit too late. Photon Overcharge will not go down quite yet. He did spot this in time. Very good pull time there on the probes. Only loses 2 there to the Widow Mines. If we look, at the units lost here, it is 4 SCVs lost, 4 probes lost, so this is very even. Bunch of Marines moving across the map though. Will catch the Stalkers off guard, picks one off immediately. Stutter Steps tries to catch the next one, but not quite there. Photon Overcharge has been used in the main, so it is not available for the natural. Natural base may go down for the Protoss player if he's not careful here. Will start attacking with the Stalkers. He's got an Oracle in the main base and some Phoenix dealing damage to the Terran player, but he might lose his natural base at the same time. His warp gate is not done yet, surprisingly, and he's building zealots and stalkers out of naked gateways, and that's not what you want as a Protoss player. Oracle will start to move homes, as will the Phoenix, and he's scrambling for any sort of defense he can get right now. He needs to be doing damage with the Stalker, which he is, focusing down Marines one at a time. And he will eventually be able to push this back, as Stalkers can trade very, very well with Marines, especially now that the Phoenix are back home. He can lift these and not deal with anything at all, but he's very behind on the economy. He's down in expansion. Sure, he picked off a handful of SCVs here. Okay, more than a handful. He picked off 15 SCVs there, but at the same time, it's 2 mules, 2 SCVs at a time. He's still very behind. I've seen a Terran player come back from 0 SCVs before. It is entirely possible. The Terran player looks to be in a very good spot right now. He's sort of sacking his unit counts. He does have a very nice unit count, but it's not quite where you'd want it as a Terran player at 10 minutes into the game. So from here, we should see the game normalize. Neither player at this point wants to play very aggressive, as the Protoss player is just going to be turtling for a little while. He's raising his Phoenix count, raising his higher tier unit count essentially. And the Terran player, he just wants to get his SCV count back up. Widowmine will pick off a Phoenix. Oh, no, not quite enough damage. Will not pick off a Phoenix here. Does a lot of splash damage to his own SCVs. Oracle will get in and starts picking off more and more SCVs. Also activates Envision and picks off a Widowmine too. Very creative use of that. Terran player will start moving across the map now. He has lost 26 SCVs, so he's actually very behind in the Harvester counts. The thing is, though, he's got a very superior army. I don't know if the Protoss player ever built an Observer. I don't think he did. If we look at the Units tab here, he has built an Observer, but it is very far out there. Protoss player may end up losing his expansion yet again. There are a couple of Marauders mixed into this, so he should be able to kill that very quickly if he does focus it down. But it looks like the Protoss player instead looking to the Terran player looking to move up into the main base may end up canceling these upgrades if the Protoss player isn't careful. I don't agree with the decision to warp in Zealots here. The Zealots don't have charge, so they're going to have a very difficult time getting on top of this Bioforce, especially now that it has Stim. Instead, he should spend the gas that he has warping in Stalkers, which will be much more useful against this low Marauder count. Natural base does get killed again. Terran player is not making as many workers as maybe he should. Good Stalker count. Phoenix will start lifting up key units with Photon Overcharge as well. The Protoss player will push this back. A nice hold by the Protoss player, but still very behind economically if he doesn't get his expansion up and running soon. He's got a severe oversaturation problem in his main base. He does have a lot of tech structures. He has the ability to make Colossus. He has the ability to get Blink, Charge. He's got very good harass potential and good defensive potential as well. but he doesn't have the economy necessarily to back it up, and he doesn't necessarily, like, essentially he's stuck on these 2 bases once he gets them up. He's been stuck on 1 base for 14 minutes now. That's an extremely huge blow to a Protoss player, and not being able to get up his 3rd base economy in very near time either is even worse, I would say, than being stuck on 1 base. He will start lifting up Marines now, picking them off individually, doing his best to try and get any harassment he possibly can in. The Terran player is dropping a bunch of mules, is actually very, very healthy, I would say, in the economy in terms of how crazy this game has been and how much economic damage he's taken. If we look again, he's lost 26 workers total in this game. That's absolutely ridiculous this early in. We do see actually superior upgrades for the Protoss player. He's opted to go for armor first here, which is a new style. Well, I won't say new, but it's a relatively new meta where if you're going a very gateway heavy style with Colossus and not going into Storm very quickly afterwards, essentially if you're not going a blink build, you go charge first and then you also get +1 armor and then scoot into +1 attack. And the reason you get armor first is because it makes your zealots so much more tanky. First Colossus is popping out here just in time to deflect this push. Our Terran player may decide to scoot in anyway. Protoss is getting a little bit of damage done in the main base in the meantime. Terran player opting to go in, not defend his main base very much. I guess he is a little too far out. Baiting the Protoss player into the Widow Mines. Widow Mines do a lot of damage to the Stalkers, wipe out the Zealot counts, and this is one of the bad things about going armor first, is it doesn't factor in the spell damage of Widow Mines. Colossus does go down and the Terran player will keep up the contain. Protoss does have a very good economy. Needs to scoot some of these workers over to the 3rd base. Can fully saturate, or excuse me, the natural base. Can fully saturate the natural as well as the gases with the amount he's got here and the amount that he's mining out. Continuing to do all sorts of damage at home for the Terran player. Even more SCVs going down up to a total of 32 now. Photon Overcharge is activated. There's still no charge on the Zealots. Colossus is not out yet, and the Protoss player is holding on by the skin of his teeth. Will start to scoot forward with his Stalkers and Immortals. He doesn't have an Observer with his army, so he can't deal with these Widow Mines. Widow Mine shots do go off on the Zealots, and there is nothing left to tank for these Stalkers. Stalkers start to take a ton of damage. Immortal going down as well. Oh, no, saved just barely. The Phoenix come back just in time to pick off a medevac. Will start lifting up key targets in the Marauders. Accidentally cancels that lift there. I've done that myself a few times. Phoenix are proving invaluable though. These things have gotten more kills than the average unit in StarCraft. Widow Mines are still hanging out back at home, but there is an Observer now to deal with this. Terran player going for a 3rd base, smartly building a planetary here. Planetary is probably more for the just the threat of, like, the Protoss player is always going to be like, it's essentially a 2-base Protoss right now, which is always scary, even though it's 20 minutes into the game. Probes will get pulled here. Mothership Core takes a shot, but of course Mothership Core has a slightly too, has slightly too much HP to die from that. Now, one thing I'm interested in here is how the Protoss player is going to spend this money. I have like a bit of a problem with this myself, but like part of it is that he doesn't have his 3rd expansion, so he's not building probes constantly, but he also needs to throw on far more tech structures, or excuse me, production structures. He has 5 gateways right now and a robo and a Stargate, but he's not producing constantly. Drop will come into the main base. Unfortunately, there's no probes to kill here. Photon Overcharge will be activated. Cannon taking out a Marauder there. And this should be held fairly easily. Phoenix is out now to deal with the medevac. This is the, I guess, utility of Phoenix Colossus, is that you are able to deal with drops very, very easily with Phoenix, as Phoenix outspeed medevacs unless there is the medevac speed, in which case the medevacs are, I guess, equal in speed. Yeah, it's about, it should be equal. What is this? I think they move at 4.25, and speed medevacs do as well. Protoss player moving out again to do more harassment, more damage. He doesn't have a whole lot at home. He's got a very low Stalker count, which isn't that big a deal, as the Viking count is literally nothing. Okay, never mind. It's not literally nothing. It's 2. But that may as well be nothing against 2 Colossus, as it will take way too many volleys to bring those down. I would still like to see a few more Stalkers, though, especially considering charge is not yet finished. We've also seen that this player has been going mass Widow Mines, or, well, not mass Widow Mines, but very many. Terran player stims forward, tries to engage, kites back a little bit. These Zealots do not have charge. More Zealots being worked in. Colossus do not have range yet, if I'm not mistaken. So it will be very difficult to engage these Marauders, these fat Marauders. Widow Mine shot does go off on the Phoenix, does damage the Medevac a little bit. More Widow Mines burrowing will go off on the Zealots, taking out the majority of them. Phoenix taking out all of the Medevacs except for one. Photon Overcharge is activated at the natural. Stalkers come in, but it's too little too late. There aren't any Zealots to tank for them. The Terran player has overstimmed, though. He has lost far too much HP on his units, and he's forced back a little bit. Cannot engage into this big, huge meat grinder that is this, like, choke point here. Phoenix are trying to do a little bit more damage, but there are Vikings here now. One Phoenix getting taken out is going straight for the Medevac, but there are too many Marines underneath. Can't get it. Terran player will move in. Photon Overcharge is not activated in time. Lots of Stalkers now to deal with the 2 Vikings that remain in the sky. There are Widow Mines. Will walk forward onto those. Neither Widow Mine goes off. None of the 3 go off. This is very, very good for our Protoss player. He's still down in terms of how strong his army is against this. Will get the Colossus taken out. Terran player trading his entire army for the Colossus count, which I actually agree with in this situation. He's ahead in the economy technically because he has more ability to produce harvesters. He also has better, I guess, saturation, 38 probes. Okay, he is transferring these now. But it's far easier to make a bunch of barracks units than it is to replace 2 Colossus. 2 Colossus takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and in that time, he'll be able to get up his Viking count as well. Phoenix count has been significantly reduced after that engagement, though. Far less harass is going to happen now that the Phoenix count is lower. Both players actually keeping their money relatively low for this like crazy spot in the game. There's been constant aggression out of our Terran player. He looks to be harassing again here. 3 Marauders and a Marine. Photon Overcharge is activated. No, it's not. I swear to God I saw it. I'm not crazy, boys. Marauders will stim, pick off a few more probes, and then pick up and leave. More Marauders and Marines scooting over into the natural, looking to cut off this area here. He will pick off the Observer, so there is no way to deal with these Widow Mines right now, other than for the Protoss player to bait the shots. It looks like he will bait the shot right on top of the Marines. Very smart play by our Protoss player. Lowers a lot of the Marines down to unstimmable territory and lowers the HP of the Marauders too. Archons loaded up and ready to go. Lots of shields on these puppies, so they will be able to do plenty of damage to the Bio Forces. Photon Overcharge activated at the 3rd base, dealing with this little tiny drop here. Just a handful of Marauders. No big deal. And there aren't any probes here, actually. Again, huge oversaturation. I honestly feel like the Protoss player should just throw down a hidden Nexus or a 4th base, like right here, and just try and defend it as best he can, because right now, like, he has the money to do it, he has the army to defend it, and he's got way too many probes for the bases he's on. Storm has finished, though, and the Terran player does not have enough medevacs to support his army against this sort of aggression. Unfortunately, shields are starting to run out on the Archons, so they are forced back. Colossus may be picked off. The Stalkers are left as sacrifice to draw the aggro of the army, but there still might not be enough. Templar being slow, fat, unable to keep up with the army. Charge lots now running in, plenty of charge lots. Colossus able to do a bit more damage now that it has some tank for it. I still don't think the Protoss player has gotten Colossus range yet, unfortunately, as Colossus range would help a lot in zoning in these engagements, as he's lost a lot of his Colossus to just poor positioning, essentially. not being able to keep his Colossus out of range of the Marauders. I believe Marauders have an attack range of 6, as do Colossus. So, in essence, without range upgrade, anytime a Colossus can shoot a Marauder can shoot a Colossus, and that's not a situation you want to be in. Third Nexus will be taken out despite Photon Overcharge. This Marauder is thanking his lucky stars that he didn't get stimmed one more time. There is not a Storm yet. There isn't quite enough energy on that High Templar. There is one Colossus here against 2 Vikings. There are a lot of Archons as well, so the Protoss players should be able to push this back. Charge lots zooming on forward. Colossus aggro being drawn by the reinforcements. Not quite as efficient as you want it to be. Archon's able to kill off the Vikings. Terran player making a slight mistake here, I would say, loading up into the medevac with Phoenixes around. He does have a 4th base as well. Will be able to out macro the Protoss player as long as things continue the way they have been. Protoss has been stuck on essentially 1 base the entire game. He hasn't had more than a 1.5 base economy all game, in my opinion, or as far as I've observed. Terran player does have decent saturation considering, again, how weird this game has been. Protoss player is going to start up his aggression on the 4th base here, looking to pick off the CC, and he should be able to. This is the same CC that was pulled from the main base, so it's unfortunate. He'll lose a lot of energy in terms of mules and scans there. Terran player looking to just counterattack instead. Ton of zealots being warped in, and he may be able to deflect this as long as he gets back home in time. He won't be able to save his Nexus though. The Terran player has far too many Marauders here, stims up his army, scoots forward, will pick off the Nexus. Not even a cancel by our Protoss player. Very inefficient there. Now, the economies have been reset again. This is so weird. I've never seen anything like this, honestly. Protoss player still has this 1 Phoenix. How many kills is this? Okay, it has 2 kills, but it's been extremely efficient. Charge lot scooting forward against these Marauders again. Colossus able to shoot down these Marauders as the Zealots tank damage. And Marauders are actually not very good against Zealots, but 1 fatty Widowmine shot will take out the majority of the Zealots, and with most of the tank gone from this army, the Protoss player is forced to retreat. Now, I want to point out yet again, the Protoss player has forgotten Colossus range. This is such a big deal. He would have picked off so much more in that last fight, or gotten more damage on these Marauders if he had Colossus range. He would have been able to get so many more shots off. And the thing that's so important about Colossus range is getting more damage on top of these Marauders in this situation is, if we look at the medevac counts, he has 4 medevacs and he's constantly stimming up. He can't afford to heal up all of his units anymore. He simply doesn't have the medevacs, he doesn't have the energy, so any damage you do on these units is essentially permanent at this point, or it'll waste even more of the medevac energy. Another semi-full medevac being picked off by the Phoenix here, extremely cost efficient with these, not losing them for anything. More and more units being picked off from by our Protoss player. Still has this Oracle, this 34 kill Oracle from the beginning of the game. 2 more medevacs being loaded up. Will start to scoot down to the bottom side, maybe looking to deal with the 3rd base, but he leaves the rest of his reinforcements exposed. The Protoss player will scoot forward, noticing the opportunity. Wow, that was actually a really bad Widowmine shot. Though the Terran player will be able to kill this Nexus yet again. Cancelled at the last second. Terran player stimming forward, able to pick off plenty of probes. Unfortunately, though, that's not actually that big of a deal considering the probe counts. Our Protoss player is picking off more and more medevacs with the Phoenix here. This is such a big deal because the Phoenix, or the medevac count is actually 1. It's just this 1, and now it's 0. And all of these units, all of this damage is permanent. Every stim is a big deal now. Every single Colossus laser is permanent, and all of that damage is compounded. And every single fight he takes efficiently, where he can get a little bit more damage on these Terran bio forces, is a little bit closer he gets to a victory. on the Terran's end of things, he needs to be exploiting the fact that he's actually got like 30,000 SCVs. He needs to be mass expanding now. He needs to be hiding expansions around the map. He needs to be long distance mining with some of these SCVs. Like, half of these SCVs here aren't even doing anything, in my opinion. Like, the efficiency of these SCVs has to be like around 1%. He would literally get like way more. Oh, Fatty Storm there on the Terran forces. And again, this is what I'm saying. All of these forces are around half HP, and there's no medevacs to heal them up. Just this solitary medevac with 68 energy. What is this going to do? Absolutely nothing. It'll heal up like a Marauder or two, but it's not going to be in time for the next engagement, or really anything for that matter. But as I was saying, like, he should be long distance mining with at least some of these. Like, the high yield expansion isn't that far away from the third base, where he should be able to mine from that fairly efficiently, and it's going to be, anything is going to be more efficient than 36 workers on these 8 almost mined out mineral patches, especially off of a long distance mine there. He does start up another CC and does float his natural over into the 4th-ish base area. Does have another drop heading into the main base, as well as a large attack with Marauders over near the 3rd. Protoss player is forced to split up his army, decides to send his entire army actually up to the main base. This is a huge key for Terran player to run in, snipe the 3rd base yet again with those Marauders. Will stim forward, starts to run up there, just naked Colossus. Huge mistake by our Protoss player. Storms do go down. Terran splits as best he can in this scenario. Actually loses a lot more than I expected. Another High Templar just sitting there. Another Storm. Does only hit one Marauder though. Terran player decides to pick up and leave despite his reinforcements being just on time. The Colossus count has been effectively reset though. There is only one Colossus left over despite there being a handful of Archons. 2 full energy High Templar. He's missed his opportunity though, and he will not be able to snipe this base. Phoenix will track down these medevacs until the end of time, and this is just like the story of this game, where the Terran player gets beat back over and over again, just barely in these defenses, picking away at the Protoss player over and over again, and the Protoss player being as efficient as he can with his few units that he can. Despite the mistakes he's making, he's able to pick off medevacs, keep that medevac count low, and as long as he can keep the medevac count low, his Colossus should be able to remain uncontested, as there won't be Vikings in the sky, because there has to be constant medevac production. Looks like our Terran player is loading up again, looking to do damage in the main base. Will spot out an Artosis pylon, but he's also assaulting the 3rd base with a small contingent of forces. He is looking to contain the Protoss player. Unfortunately, the Protoss has far too much for that to be truly effective right now. Colossus does pop out at the exact wrong moment. I mean, the Robo got destroyed anyway, but man, that must be a scary place to scoot out into. These are going almost uncontested though. There is a DT here. A single DT swiping away at these will be able to eventually deal with these all, but he's lost a large portion of his production, a couple of tech structures, a forge. And again, I have to point out, the Protoss player is floating so many minerals. If these minerals were in units, I would say the Protoss would have about 30 to 40 more supply right now. And instead of managing this defense with a handful of DTs, just barely able to pick off these units in time and save the Nexus, he would be pressuring the opponent's base, killing off the Terran player once and for all. He should be spending these resources. He should be getting an expansion, some 4th base, maybe right here, maybe right here, maybe even take the high yield expansion if he wants to. These are all options, but again, like, he's just floating 500 gas. Those could be Archons. Those could be anything at all. But unfortunately, he's just floating them instead. The Terran player is playing extremely efficiently, and that's why he's in such a good spot right now. Why he's been able to continue to pressure despite losing so many SCVs early on is because he's always been spending his money. He's been keeping it extremely low all game. His spending skill is insane. insane right now. He will start to pick off more tech structures. Actually, going for the Nexus here, I don't agree with this. He should be focusing down things like the Templar Archives, the robotics facility, the Stargate. The Nexus doesn't really matter at this point, and neither does the Twilight Council. The thing is, he already has a Dark Templar Shrine, he already has a Templar Archives, he already has Charge and or Blink. Actually, I don't think he has Blink yet, but that doesn't necessarily matter, because at the end of the day, he's not going to get Blink. So if you pick off the Templar Archives, what does it really do to the Protoss player? If you don't pick off something else, like, it doesn't matter, because he already has all the tech he needs. Terran player will stim up into the third base, takes a bunch of damage on his Marines from a fatty storm, but will pick off the third base, and he's able to get out yet again. Will lose the majority of his army here, though. I think the Protoss player is honestly playing a little bit too scared here. He's got 3 Archons, 2 Colossus. I'm pretty sure he's got superior upgrades. It's 2-1 to 2. Okay, it's actually dead even in terms of upgrades. But he needs to, he keeps, like, his economy is not there, right? He's got the same problem as the Terran player, where instead of long distance mining, where, like, yeah, you could have SCVs, you could have half of your SCVs long distance mining from the gold mineral patches, and it would be far more efficient than 37 SCVs at one base here. Like, this doesn't make sense. This is extremely inefficient, and it's the same story with our Protoss player. Like, sure, long distance mining is actually fine right now because he's missing a base. This Nexus isn't quite complete yet. But at the same time, that's only going to last so long. Like, honestly, if I had a tip for either of these players, it's consider long distance mining an option. It's honestly not that big a deal. Terran Bio Forces are scooting over, will spot the 4th base, but decides to go up into the 3rd instead. There are a lot of high energy High Templar here. They will get a couple of okay, those weren't very good storms, but the Archons and the Colossus are, like I said, going uncontested. There's no ghosts for EMPs. There's no Vikings to deal with these Colossus. These Colossus are going to have free reign despite not having the Colossus range upgrade. Forge is started again, so he will start to go for upgrades once he has a bit more gas. And he is splitting up his probes again now, so he will have slightly better saturation, but again, I really don't agree with this. I think long distance mining should really be considered more substantial by these players, especially since they're bleeding out this many resources. If we look at the units lost, I really like to look at units lost in these long of games because it just looks so stupid. 284 Marines lost. That's like how many Lings you'd see lost in a really long Ling Bling Muta versus Biomine game. Like, 284 Marines, 87 Marauders, 8 Colossus, 14 Phoenix, 67 Zealots. Like, these units lost counts are insane. Terran player stims forward, does his best, picks off the 4th Nexus yet again, scoots on out, will end up losing a significant portion of his army here, actually. And yet again, more medevacs will be picked off by these fatty Phoenix. These guys have been so efficient all game long. Seriously, I wish my Phoenix would ever do this amount of damage. Our Protoss player does scoot forward with his Zealots, with his entire army, really, and this looks like he's breaking the Terran player. There's not a whole lot left over. He is now finally starting to take that gold base, but his army supply is significantly worse. And he just keeps getting his units picked off here. And I think the real problem is he's got nothing to deal with these Colossus. Colossus by themselves, they're already really strong. But, like, what is he going to do? He doesn't have Vikings. He doesn't have Ghosts. He's got no way to deal with the Colossus. No way to stop these full energy High Templar. He will go for the base race, though. Pulls about half of his SCVs and a lot of his bio army, all of his bio army to deal with that. Protoss player is doing his best to deal with the base race scenario. Does he still have Phoenix, though, is the question. He still has 4 Phoenix. If he keeps this Phoenix alive, he wins the base race. Because the Terran player can never actually trade with his army, and the Terran can't also lift his buildings to the corner of the map and just be, like, completely fine. So it looks like the Protoss player should win this. It all depends on how fast he's able to find the structures and to deal with the structures. It's also a very big key here. Does he actually have any scans? He's got 4 scans there, no scans at that base, but there are DTs out, and there's the capability to make more. So if he splits these DTs well and baits out the scans, he'll be able to deal with this army eventually. And the majority of the army's gone. I don't think he can kill all of these buildings before the Protoss player kills all of his. Sure, Phoenix kill buildings very slowly, but with 2 more DTs, as well as the capability to make 2 more after that, warping around his zealots, like, even that would be able to deal with the Terran player's army right now. And the Terran player's scrambling. He just simply can't find enough. He's trying to build command centers and barracks at this base over here. Another side effect of not having Colossus range is that they actually can't outrange missile turrets, which is super sad. More DTs scooting in here, dealing with the army, and despite the scan, these DTs are still going to clean up. There's actually 2 cannons, and these 2 cannons pose more of a threat to the Terran player's army than anything I've ever seen. I've never seen a bio army more scared of cannons. Terran player is trying his best here to deal with anything, to deal with everything, but he's down to, like, his last Marauder here. He's got 16 SCVs against 3 Archons, 2 DTs, 3 Colossus, 2 Stalkers, and this is it. GG is called by our Terran player, and in a 51-minute game, our Protoss player pulls out a victory in one of the stupidest games I've ever seen. That was absolutely insane. Very, very close. Very, very back and forth. If I were to give tips to both of these players, to the Protoss player, spend your money more efficiently. If you've got 1500 resources, invest a little bit of money in a Nexus. Even if it gets canceled, hey, you have the ability to maybe get some resources up eventually. Put down more production structures. 5 gateways is not enough against Terran. Doesn't matter if you're producing, like, because you need to be able to do large Zealot, Stalker, Warpins, but you also need to be able to Warpin Archons and High Templar, and that's at least 3 gateways you're committing to that. So you need a lot more gateways to keep your money low and stuff like that. But to both of these players, long distance mine if you have 30 workers mining on a single base. Honestly, it's not that big a deal. Like, if either of them had spent 10 workers on these gold mineral patches, especially gold mineral patches this close to a base, like, it would have been so efficient, so much more efficient. Like, 30 workers are mining at, like, such low efficiency that they may as well not even be there. To the Terran player, you played well, but you never got the critical mass of bio forces, right? You were always fighting with such low, like, swells of units that you weren't able to do quite enough damage. And if you notice in the resources lost, the Protoss player was 20,000 resources lost ahead. You're not fighting efficiently when you use that small amount of bio forces. You need to prioritize getting more medevacs so that your units aren't constantly at half HP. And on top of that, I'd recommend spending a lot more money on, instead of aggression, since the Protoss player was playing very passively, instead spend it on an expansion at the gold base, an expansion here even. Like, just put them everywhere on the map. You have the SCV count for it. You have 30 mining at one base. You may as well put on some other form of economy. Again, just like I said about Protoss, even if it gets canceled, what if it didn't, you know? What if he doesn't notice it or he doesn't pressure you? There's another expansion that you have up, potentially, that can allow you to get ahead in the economy even more in this, like, low econ scenario. Think of it this way. If you have that base and it gets canceled, what do you lose? Oh, 100 minerals. Okay, whatever. if you do get the base up, what do you have to gain? Extremely more mining efficiency, possibly doubling your opponent's income. That's such a big advantage to have. It wouldn't matter if you're 20,000 resources behind and the resources lost if you can make twice as much as him. In any case, my name is Walnut. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. This has been the longest game in the history of mankind. Thank you so much. Be sure to drop a subscription at my YouTube channel, follow my Twitch and Twitter, and I will see you guys next time.